Okay, I think we've got the mics are live at this point for everybody's information. Cato, are you on? Evidently, Cato is not with us yet. But,
I'm not sure if he was going to be able to join us.
Okay, for the Cato is just joined us for the workshop. Okay. Where did Wendy go? Disappeared.
Right here.
Okay, let's begin. Call the meeting to order. Certainly appreciate everybody being here. We have Bill Trout on the phone here. So, Bill, we appreciate you being with us. Want to really express appreciation to the staff for excellent presentation this morning in the workshop. We had thought it was really well done. A lot of important subjects and presented very well. So we'll look forward to the results of some of those presentations in this meeting and in future meetings. We will start with the agenda. First of all is the consent items on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda, then approval of the minutes of the the July 24th meeting and the August 3rd meeting, and then the appointment of hearing officers for rulemaking hearings. Is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda? Got a motion? We have a second? Okay. With no objection, we will use a voice vote on this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to the action items on first reading. First is the Charter School Performance Framework, and Tess is going to present that. We'll call the roll. Okay, let's we do have one on conference call here. Let's call the roll. So Phyllis, call the roll for us, please.
Ms. Chansey.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson. Ms. Perry. Mr. Roberts. Dr. Trout.
Here.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Mr. Ralston.
Here. Okay. Thanks, Phyllis. Okay. Now move to the item 2A. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Today I present to you on first reading updates to the State Board of Education's Charter School Performance Framework. As a little background, and we talked about it earlier this morning, the Performance Framework is a national authorizing best practice, and it's the key document that the board will use to hold any authorized charter school accountable in terms of academic, financial, and operational performance. The framework will be incorporated in a contract between the state board and an authorized charter school. And annually, charter schools authorized by the board will receive a report on their performance based upon the framework, and this report will be provided to the board and the general public. So the performance framework was first approved by the board in October 2014, and we are bringing these changes to you to ensure the framework is aligned to the state's accountability system, where there have been some updates and changes, as well as to include a few additional measures. So the cover page goes into great detail regarding what those changes are, but I wanted to highlight 3 top-level changes for you. The first is an addition of a 3-year TVOS composite data point. This is so that we can be tracking schools' growth both on a 1-year trend as well as over a 3-year trend. A change to the gap closure measure to look at TVOS subroot growth, which is a measure that the department will now be using to analyze gap closure. So we wanted to change that in our own performance framework around gap closure. And then in addition, in certain areas, we've added some new assessments as new assessments have come on board for the department. And we've made a note that as new assessments come on board, they will be incorporated into those performance frameworks as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Any questions for Tess?
I don't have a question. I just want to reiterate something that Dr. Hayburn said earlier, that you guys have done really great work in a very short window of time on this. And this framework, I think, is going to give, if we do wind up authorizing schools, it's going to give them what they need to know what their path to success is for kids. So thank you.
Good comment. Appreciate that. Okay, any questions? I think they're basically mostly getting the alignment work done with the and working and so forth, and I certainly agree with Wendy's comments. I think it's good work. Any questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? A motion, second? Got a second. Any questions? Do we call the roll, or I think without objection we'll use the voice vote on these here and call the roll on the ones that the rule session that normally call the roll on. So without objection, let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, Tess. You've got the next one, I believe.
I do. So as we discussed earlier, we are bringing changes on first reading around the charter school intervention policy. These changes provide additional details regarding what authorized schools would be expecting to see around general conditions of an intervention and those potential action and consequences that may ensue. So the policy now includes a table of interventions that outlines those possible responses. These changes in this table is based on practices that we see in authorizers both within the state as well as nationally, but they've been tailored to meet the specific context of the state board. This intervention policy will be included in any contract, so it's very clear from an authorized school perspective what they may be held accountable to in terms of intervention policy. And it's really important to note, and this is in the policy, but I wanted to clarify this, that we make it clear that these steps don't have to be sequential. If the board or the staff sees that we need to escalate a consequence based on an issue, that's certainly possible, and it's outlined in our policy as well. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions for Tess. Whitney?
What triggers an intervention? Is this at the 1-year review? Is this at the 5-year?
It could be any time. So we do have some things outlined in the policy around those annual reports and kind of based on their performance framework. But if we get information or through our annual monitoring or oversight, an issue comes up, we can, create an intervention at that time. We've outlined in the policy what action can be a staff-led action, kind of the level 1s, level 2s that we could just, send a letter to the governing board saying, here's an issue, remedy it. But some of the more harsher consequences, that would require a board action. So we would be bringing a recommendation to the board with the evidence that we have regarding here's the recommended action, and then the board would have to vote on that.
So can I just ask one follow-up? So say 3 months into the school year, the staff gets an anonymous letter saying, your charter school has, they're doing something with their banking records wrong. You have the authority to then immediately go and check and verify or show.
Yeah, and I don't know if Angie wants to speak a little bit more if it's necessary, but we have thought about that in terms of a contracting perspective too, that kind of allows that the staff can come to the school site if necessary, to make sure that we are able to very quickly follow up and investigate on things if needed.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading?
So moved.
Got a motion? Second? Second. Got a second? Okay, any questions? Okay, without objection, we will also have a voice vote on this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Jess. And again, I think that you and Angie have done some great work on getting all these things put together. I feel that we've got the structure in place with this. Okay, we'll now move to the action items on final reading. The first is the Education License Policy 5.502, and Amy's going to do that. Okay?
Good afternoon. This educator licensure policy is the policy that has already been approved. And actually, we began implementation on September 1st this year. And this item simply makes a few minor technical corrections to the policy. There are only two that I'd point out. There's a correction to grade spans for earth science and physics and a few others that were erroneously listed as being 9-12 when they should have been 7-12. And then the 6-12 grade span on the physics endorsement was listed as having been superseded when it should not have been. Again, those are both just technical corrections. The other one that I would mention is that there was an error in terms of a word in the transition plan that we intend to allow educators who met the requirements under the old policy on or before August 31st to have until December 1st to get the paperwork into our office. They had to meet the expectation by August 31st, but and that's in line with former practice. So those are the only two substantial changes.
Okay. Questions for Amy? Any questions? Is there a motion to approve on final reading?
Okay.
A motion second.
Second.
Okay. A motion second. Any questions? Any discussion? Okay. Without objection, we will have a voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it. And you've got the next one also, item B.
Yes. This item is the professional assessments for Tennessee educators policy. Again, this is primarily technical corrections. We had a few grade spans that were omitted or incorrect that we just corrected. The only one that I will point out to you, and this is just to bring this policy in alignment with our educator licensure policy. When we originally passed this policy, it had the interventionist grade spans were K-5 and 6-12, and after communication with stakeholders, we shifted that to K-8 and 6-12, and so this just brings this policy into alignment with our educator licensure policy.
Okay. Any questions here? Question for Amy? Is there a motion to approve on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Second. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Discussion? Okay. Without objection, we'll have a voice vote on this one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Amy. Hey, Laura, Basic Education Program, BEP Review Committee appointment.
Good afternoon. Item 3C is the staff's recommendation of a list of individuals to be appointed to the 2015-2016 Basic Education Program Review Committee. You'll find the attached list of individuals following the cover sheet, and they represent a wide range of stakeholders, including directors of schools, local budget directors, individuals from county and municipal governments, as well as the addition of a teacher this year on the Basic Education Review Committee. And then as well, the other addition is a human resources director from a local LEA. We felt like that would be an important addition given the discussion around teacher compensation and what is going to be important to attract teachers into Tennessee and the teaching profession here. Happy to take any questions on that item.
Any questions? Questions for Laura? Okay, the group is similar to
Yes.
groups that we've had in the past on the DEP review committee. Many of the same individuals,
That is
positions and so forth, with the exception of the ones that Laura mentioned being additions.
correct.
Any questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve on final reading?
So moved.
A motion? Second? Second? Got a second. Hey, we're making progress. Any questions? Okay, without exception, we'll do this on voice vote also. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Or one thing that we talked just briefly about this morning, and maybe a good time to get you to give us an update on, is all the work that we've got going on relative to standards review, and just a brief update on where we stand on math and English language arts, and also plans going forward for social studies and science.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. So excited to report that we've continued to make good progress on the standards review front. We had, I'll talk first about math and English language arts. So our educator review team members have been meeting over the course of the summer, and you had the opportunity to hear from one of those members at our July meeting. Their work is wrapping up here in the next few weeks. They had their final in-person meeting this past weekend here in Middle Tennessee, and they are approaching the conclusion of the first set of their work, which is the production of a draft set of standards. And so as soon as we get that draft set of standards from those educator review teams, in mid-October we will be posting those back on a public website for another period of public review of the standards. We'll also be working at that time to gather some additional feedback. So we'll be doing regional meetings in each of the core regions around the state to receive feedback from educators and parents, the small in-person sessions. We'll also be working with individuals from higher education programs. So we'll be coordinating with UT, TBR, as well as the TCUA organization to have higher education reviewers take a look at our standards and ensure that they're still meeting the appropriate benchmarks for rigor and college and workforce readiness. Also at that time, the Standards Recommendation Committee will be meeting throughout the fall. So they'll be meeting in October, November, and December to hear from our educator committee members about what are the key changes that have been made to the standards, to hear a collection of the feedback reports that we're gathering on behalf of them, and then ultimately in December to make their final recommendations. And all of that information will be coming to you all in January on first reading. We do, however, plan to provide an update at the October State Board meeting. We'll have educator review team members on hand to talk about some of the key and significant changes they've made, particularly in high school math, as it pertains to the fourth-year course requirement for high school math. So we'll have a lengthy update on that, as well as some changes to the English language arts electives, both at the October meeting. Any questions on math or English language arts I can address?
Just a comment here. I think that this is all the processes we put in place don't work as well as we like one to. But I think this is one that goes beyond our expectations in terms of the way it's turning out. So I think we really feel good about the results and the people who have been working on it. Great job.
Absolutely agree. We couldn't have asked for a better team of educator reviewers this summer. Just to give you an example of their dedication, we were working this past Saturday, had a power outage for an hour and a half, and they didn't bat an eyelash, kept working right on through it, didn't even pick up to say, oh, do we need to leave early? No, they just powered right through until the power came back on an hour and a half later. And our Standards Recommendation Committee, we've had the ability to be able to do an orientation with them back in August, and a similarly dedicated group that we're excited to work with throughout the fall. And I think one of the great privileges of this process has been that we've gotten to really work on the transparency and the engagement piece with the math and the English language arts standards, and we're really just going to build on that as we move into reviewing science and social studies standards. So I think it's allowed us to get really tight in terms of our process and all of the different groups that we want to engage, and so now we have a foundation for the work going forward. And so also happy to announce at this time that we've got our science standards up, posted on a public review website right now that launched last week. And we sent around a press release to major media outlets as well as key stakeholders in the science community also. So those standards are up and ready to review, and we just ask that as you all interact with the constituents in your field that you continue to share that information with them. That review will be open through late fall, and then moving into the spring we'll have a very similar period of additional public engagement, working with higher education, another public review on the website, all leading, and another standards recommendation committee being appointed for that set of standards, all leading up to first reading on the science standards in July. And then not far behind that, we'll have social studies coming on board. So we're doing a heavy review of our major subjects here in the next 18 months or so. So social studies, due to some feedback we received starting this past spring, around some things we wanted to take a closer look at on the social studies standards, as well as some more recent public feedback that we've received. We're going to start the review process for that beginning in January. So beginning in early January, there will be a public website open for review and comment on the social studies standards.
Okay. Any questions for our standards review? Okay.
Thank you.
Good work. Good report. Appreciate it. Okay, we move to item D, educator license, the permanent rule, and Angie.
Thank you, Chairman and members. So this rule for final reading is one that you have seen many times before now. You originally approved this rule unanimously in July of 2014. We discovered earlier this year that there was a technical anomaly in the Rules Omnibus Bill, and therefore this rule was allowed to expire on June 30th of this, or June 1st of this year. So in order to correct this technical anomaly, at our July meeting, you all passed an emergency rule, which was the full text of the previous rule, just to make sure that this rule would be in effect in time for the September 1 implementation date of all of the changes that are in the rule and in the policy that Amy discussed with you a little bit earlier. So this is kind of the final step in the process. We had a rulemaking hearing earlier this month, or late last month, I'm sorry, and now this is the final reading of the permanent rule so that we can get this rule in place on a permanent basis.
Okay, very good. Questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve on final reading? A motion, second? Second. All right. Okay. Any questions? Okay, this requires a roll call vote. So Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Harper. Aye. Dr. Trout.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye. The ayes have it. The rule is approved. Okay, we'll now move to the item 4, charter school appeal items. And Sarah, you can do that?
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. And this item, we've already discussed a fair amount today about the board's role as a charter appellate body and a charter authorizer. But as Angie mentioned before, in code, specifically TCA 49.13.108, a sponsor of a charter school who's denied by their local district has the ability to appeal that decision to the board. And in the case of a district that has a priority school, we are in the position to potentially authorize that school should we decide that the district's decision was not in the best interest of students, the community, and staff of the proposed school. So I want to draw your attention to a couple things. You have all the information that we gathered and put together in the form of two separate reports. One that comes from me, the Executive Director's report, which is really sort of the highest level summary of all the information that we gathered throughout the process of review of this application and in conversations with the applicant. And you also have the review committee specific report. So I want to take just a minute to go a little bit more deeply beyond the cover page summary statement into some of the process that we engaged in to bring you this information. First, though, let me say that as the summary page does indicate, our recommendation to you is to affirm the decision of the Shelby County School District to deny the application for expansion of a high school. And I want to take, again, a minute to walk through the process in which we engaged to come to that recommendation. So again, per statute and board policy, as Tess and Angie have presented on today, our charge at the state board staff level is to conduct an independent de novo review of the application. So we go back through the application as it was presented to the district and any amendments that have been made since that initial submission to the district. And there are a couple of key parts of the process that I wanted to make sure we hit on. First, there's a public hearing where the sponsor and the LEA are allowed to present sort of their case and their rationale for appealing the decision, and to the LEA for their rationale in making the decision to deny the application. There's also a capacity interview where the sponsor and the review committee have a chance to engage in additional conversation where there are points of clarification that the committee members feel like they need to better inform their recommendation to me. And then there's an extensive review of the application itself by both the review committee and our board staff. And through all of that, we gather the information, look at relevant data, including past performance of existing schools, and bring to you our best recommendation based on the de novo review. And it's worth noting, too, and you'll see this throughout the various reports, but our standard is that all applications should meet or exceed in all areas of the criteria for us to deem them fit for a recommendation to authorize. So in this case, Omni Schools, again, who has two existing schools in Shelby County, an elementary school and a middle school, had proposed to open a high school. And you'll see in the summary tables of both my report and the review committee's report where we landed in terms of our recommendation across the various areas, academic, operations, and financial. And in all sections, we felt, based on the evidence, that the applicant really only partially met the standards, which meant that, again, our recommendation to you is that we affirm the decision of Shelby County Schools in this case. However, I would like to also point out in my report especially a few summary statements that I think, again, speak to the applicant and the LEA's process in this instance. While we do have to hold a really high bar at the state board in terms of our authorizing charge, I do want to say that we were quite impressed in the public hearing with the dedication and the commitment of the Omni School staff, the parents. It's clear that they are providing an environment in their existing schools that parents really appreciate. However, as you look at the data of their existing schools, they have their challenges cut out for them. They're both on the priority list currently, and while there are some small signs of growth in terms of their most recent data, again, as Shelby County had determined, our review committee and my ultimate recommendation is that at this time, their energies as a network will be best focused on their existing schools, and we feel that they are up to the challenge, but it certainly is a tremendous challenge to move those schools off the priority list before we would consider authorizing a school that would allow them to expand to a high school. So I'll stop there. You have all the supporting documentation, and there's additional documentation on the box file, and take any questions that you may have, and certainly look to Tess and Angie to fill in where I've forgotten.
Great question. Yes. Yes.
Wendy.
Only. That was a compliment. I'll take that. So you mentioned the growth data, and I actually looked, everybody's surprised, I looked at everything in the Dropbox, and it appears that they had some significant growth that they should be applauded for in some areas, but generally, like just overall, the growth was not on track to move this school into a high-performing school, but these two schools by any stretch. Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah, in just the recent year, they did see some growth, particularly in the middle school, but the elementary, it's still mixed.
And am I right? They call it lower school, I guess. The lower school, they have 2 years of data, and the middle school has 3 years of data, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe that's right, Tess.
And none of that. And again, I don't want to like diminish the growth that they've seen, but this isn't a situation where they had kids come in this past year. Their achievement was really low, such that they're bottom 5%, but they started really low and had massive growth and still were really low, right? This is a situation where they just haven't been able to get it done for those years.
Right. Our assessment of the data is that the growth is not yet to the point where we would feel comfortable allowing the high school to open at this time. Yeah.
But I guess I'm trying to distinguish, if you hear a lot about creaming of kids, right? Mm-hmm. And charter schools cream kids, and they take the higher flyers or the more engaged families. And what I'm trying to figure out, this is not a situation that disproves that in the sense that they came in really low performing, right? The kids did. But then there wasn't this massive amount of growth, and they just haven't gotten there because of the low level of performance, right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Again, they came in, their students, they have a lot of challenges in terms of raising the current achievement levels of their current students, and they haven't seen significant growth yet across the board with those students.
And the reason I'm asking all these in this confusing way, I guess, is that you can't control where kids come in, right? Mm-hmm. Like they come in and you want a lot of this school clearly wants to serve a high needs population. But if you take a high needs population in a charter, the bargain is that you are going to get them there, right? You're going to get extra growth each year, and you didn't see that here.
I think that's fair to say, and Tess looks like she may have something to add.
I just wanted to clarify. I think you can take solace in knowing that to get a school onto the priority list, it takes 3 years worth of data. So you can know that at least in that sense, any school on the priority list has been in operation for 3 years. And so, yes.
Okay, great. And I saw that the sponsor disagreed, I guess, with the district's analysis anyway about whether their other schools should be considered, the work done in their other schools should be considered on this one, right? And I think the statute's really clear. But I just wanted to sort of kind of talk through that a little bit, like why it's important that you look at the other work that this sponsor has done when you're making a decision like this.
Yeah, I think I'm following you. I mean, I think in the public hearing, again, both sides were able to present their case and their rationale for appealing the decision from the applicant's standpoint, and they do feel like they're seeing some growth that is important to note. However, on the district side, they didn't feel, as they looked at schools with comparable levels of achievement, that the growth was keeping up with what they would expect to see from a school like those two existing in the network. So I do think, and as Tess sort of reiterated, the priority list and 3 years of data, they still have their work cut out for them in their existing schools, and I do think that the staff is committed and they have the, I think certainly skills and dedication, but it's going to be, that seems to be where their energies would be best focused at this time.
And here, my understanding of their application is their intent is, if they are granted a charter, to utilize the resources from the lower and the middle school, like those people and those resources, to try to start the high school. So they'd be actually taking the resources away from these schools that are on the priority list.
In some cases, yeah. They would have to be hiring some additional staff and faculty, but they would be trying to scale up and draw on a lot of the resources in their existing schools in order to open a new school. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion that we approve the recommendation of the staff, which is to affirm the decision of the Shelby County?
So moved.
Got a motion? Second? Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Requires a roll call vote. So Phyllis, you can call roll, please.
Ms. Jackson. Mr. Edwards. Ms. Hartman. Dr. Trapp. Yes. Ms. Hubbard.
Aye.
is approved. Thank you, Sarah. Good job. Okay, we'll now move to the teacher license actions. And without objection, we will plan to do items F, G, and I separately and address the others as a block. So is there a motion that we approve the recommendations of the staff for items other than F, G, and I? Got a motion or a second? Second. Got a second. Okay. Any discussion or questions on those items? Okay, this requires a roll call vote. So Phyllis, if you call the roll, please.
Ms. Jensen.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove. Aye. Dr. Trout.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Mr. Ralston.
Aye. The ayes have it. Those recommendations are approved. Okay, let's go to item F. Discussion concerning, questions concerning the recommendations on item F.
Would you like me to present a little bit of a basis, or just...
Yes, do that.
This individual was suspended under allegations of inappropriate relationship, inappropriate communications with a student, a large number of texts between the teacher and the student. We unfortunately do not have the content of the text. We just have the number and approximate time that they were sent. So there was a large number of text messages, but we don't have what exactly was in those text messages. We just have enough to know that this conduct was inappropriate as far as the timing and the amount of communications between the teacher and the student.
The recommendation is formal reprimand and kind of the support for that recommendation.
Support for that is because we don't have the actual content of the text messages. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this to a hearing or in front of a judge to say that we had enough to support a full suspension or revocation. However, the reprimand will be on his license, and future LEAs will have a basis of questioning or something that they can at least ask what happened and ask for a little bit more information.
Okay. Mike?
Are we prohibited from getting that information, the content of the text?
My understanding is that those texts were no longer available. There was a record of when they were sent, and that was acquired from the phone companies. However, the phone companies didn't have the content, and I don't understand that the student or the teacher still had those messages saved on their phones. I believe that there's no way to actually get the content once it's been deleted.
So you just said that it would be on his record and then LEAs when he applied, because he resigned here, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when LEAs, when he applied and they saw a reprimand, they could ask for more information. Is that asking him, or will this information be available from the department if they ask the department for more information?
The letter of reprimand will state why he's being reprimanded, and that is in his file with his teaching license here.
So would that say something like inappropriate contact with a student? Or
Inappropriate communication, inappropriate contact, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it wouldn't say 6,000 texts with a student, 1,500 of them between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. A student said that they had a sexual relationship. None of that would be in the letter.
No, it would not.
Okay. And they'd have to rely on him for that information.
Or his former employer. They can always ask for a recommendation from a former employer as well.
Okay. And it's not a question, but I just want to make a comment. And I told Philip this when we talked yesterday. I think that his work is I think you were doing a great job on this. This is not a reflection of you. Your analysis is a legal analysis. I get that. I'm a lawyer. And I feel like my analysis as a board member needs to be, would I be comfortable with my child in front of this teacher, and maybe that's too high of a bar, but I got sworn in to do this for 5 years, so for 5 years, that's my bar. And I just want to say I have a ton of respect for Lillian, and I appreciate what she said during the work session about her analysis of how to deal with these, and I respect that, and I think that's why there are 9 of us. I have a very different opinion. You know, for over a decade, I represented people who made really bad choices in the justice system, and you know, I also believe people make bad choices and can turn their lives around. The distinction I have is those people, it was about whether they get out of jail or, you know, go on with their personal lives and have freedom, and this is about whether you have the privilege of teaching kids. And I think it's a privilege, and I think if it's ever going to be the profession that teachers deserve it to be, then we need to take a hard line on behavior like this. And that's why, I mean, and it's just my vote. I'm not trying to tell anybody else how to vote, but I will not be able to vote yes for just a formal reprimand on this. And that's why I pulled it. I didn't want you to take it personally.
Any other comments or questions? Hey, is there a motion to, I guess we can go with different directions here. We can approve the recommendation, motion, or we could approve some other action.
Can I make a substitute that we vote to revoke the law?
No, unfortunately, we have to give the teacher notice of the intended action. So he would have to have a chance to request a hearing in front of a judge for that.
Would we be able to move for you to give further consideration for a more serious penalty, and then if that was the determination, you could give notice? And
yes, you could do that.
So, Wendy, you want to make that motion, or?
I move that item 5F be pulled from the vote today for the staff to give consideration to a harsher penalty and to give the appropriate notice as necessary.
Hey, is there a second to Wendy's motion? Got a second? Okay, do I understand the motion?
So we're voting to look at it again in October.
That's right.
It may not be October. He does need 30 days full notice, so it would probably be the meeting after that.
Okay. Other questions? Any questions about the motion? Okay. Roll call. Vote. Roll call.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Phyllis, you call the roll, please.
Ms. King.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Hargrove. Aye. Dr. Trout.
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Aye.
Mr. Ralston.
Aye. Motion is approved. Okay, we'll move to item G. Bill?
Item G is a teacher who was instructed by his administration to sign IEPs for parents who are not present. Item G is a teacher who was instructed to sign IEPs for students whose parents were not there or members of the administration were not present during those meetings either. He and I have had several discussions about this, and he's been very cooperative in talking about what happened. He's also been very cooperative in giving me other names and who in the administration at his school asked him to do this. So he's been helpful in starting looking at other misconduct around the same sort of behavior in his school. And so because of his cooperation and because of, I think, the the background of his following administrative instruction to do this. We only recommended a 1-year suspension.
So he was following administrative instructions to do this.
Correct. That is what he told me, and I tend to believe him on that.
Is that confirmed by his administration, or that's what he's saying?
That's what he's saying. He's giving me names of other teachers and other members of staff, and so I'm currently looking into it.
Have you interviewed these other people?
Not at this time.
So, if his allegations prove to be true, that's a pretty serious deal.
Correct.
Now, what are our investigative tactics?
Limited, unfortunately, and depends on what information I can get from LEAs and schools and individuals that I talk to. I don't have, say, anyone on staff who can easily go on site or anything like that. I can take trips around the state myself, but we'll see how that plays out.
Is this not similar to the situation that occurred in the Atlanta school system? I think it was the Atlanta Metropolitan School System where there was wholesale change. May have been changes at the school. It could be totally different. But there was something of a similar fashion. A lot of school administrators, teachers, principals, everybody was part of a wholesale opportunity to do something to change test scores. And I know that's what we're talking about, but it's in a similar vein.
I believe that there was a similar situation, but I'm not entirely familiar with it, unfortunately.
So, is this
Local sheriff was asked for that, and his opinion was it could have been, but they declined prosecution. I believe it could have been a forgery case.
well, they play very nascent. Public education is a subdivision of state Department of Education. Would it be a decision that the state would make, law enforcement, as to whether or not that would be pursued?
I believe that it was discussions, and I'm not entirely sure, but my understanding is it was discussions with the local sheriff and the district attorney in the area, which is a state function.
So as we spoke yesterday, so you know this one's very personal to me, both as a parent of a child with a disability and as a person who spent several years representing kids with disabilities in districts. And so I would say, wearing my lawyer hat, which I'm probably not supposed to wear here, the mandates of the IDEA is federal law. And this is a contract under federal law that this teacher, and I don't know who else, but I know this teacher, forged a signature on. And, you know, when I read the notes and the facts, this parent indicated he'd never attended the IEP meeting but would like to do so, and that makes me really angry. So I'm trying not to be, like, super angry here, but these are the most vulnerable kids in our schools, and these parents, regardless of what your child, it's hard enough to have a child without a disability, but if you have a child with a disability significant enough to need special ed services, it's challenging. And to have schools or a teacher, at least that's all I have proof of here, is a teacher, just completely disregard your rights and just blatantly decide what's going to happen for your child and sign your name. I mean, I think there needs to be a massive investigation of anybody that was doing this here, and maybe his cooperation should benefit him in some way, although he's only cooperating because he got caught. And, you know, his email, he's troubled and disheartened that he's in trouble. And it doesn't sound like he's troubled and disheartened about what he did. He's troubled and disheartened that we're looking at his license, and that bothers me. So my motion on this one would be to pull it from consideration today to get further information and further direction on where this can or should go on a broader investigation, whether it needs to be referred to the AG's office or, I mean, FBI, I don't care, but people in that school should not be doing this. And so I'm not comfortable as a board. I'm not comfortable with the 1 year retroactive suspension either, but I'm certainly not comfortable just doing that and closing this when there's so many unknowns. So my motion would be to pull this for further investigation and further consideration.
Okay, is there a second to Wendy's motion? Got a second. Other discussion? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, everybody understand the motion? Okay, Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Edwards. Aye. Ms. Hartwell. Aye. Dr. Travis. Aye. Ms. Pepper.
Aye.
Mr. Ralston.
Aye. The motion is carried. Okay, Phyllis, if you could go to item I, please.
Certainly. Item I, this teacher resigned from Shelby County following allegations of inappropriate communications with students on social media. Apparently it was communications of sexual nature, but there was no evidence that there was ever any contact between him and the students or inappropriate relationships, shall we say. He is also no longer teaching. He's also no longer in the state. He's in Little Rock. He did come before the board. I believe my predecessor, Ms. Collins, brought him in April with a lower recommendation, and that was pulled then. So we're coming back with a 2-year suspension and requirement of boundary training. I have corresponded with the teacher, and he would not object to a 2-year suspension either.
Okay. Questions here? Discussion? Wendy?
Me. Philip, again, I think it's not on, this isn't a judgment on you or your
No
judgment.
offense taken.
So this is I was here in April. I think I moved to pull it, and you're moving in the right direction. However, just so we're all clear, he created a closed social media group with students, right, where they were discussing very sexual things. Wasn't the group was something about have you ever, right, or
right.
Never have
Right.
I ever, and they would go back and forth about things, changing the name to Miley Cyrus Ratchet Booty, talking about, I don't even want to say it out loud, so the reports are here about what they are discussing. He's discussing, according to students, he denied it, his sexual activity with other teachers, right?
Correct.
I mean, all this, and then the part that actually bothers me almost as much is the report. Who did the investigation where all these, I couldn't tell that. It says Michael Woods. Is that his district?
I believe this was out of Shelby County, so they would have been the ones doing the
It
investigation.
would have been Shelby County Schools doing
Correct.
the investigation, because where they said he was very arrogant and unapologetic for his actions throughout, despite constant attempts by his representative to temper his behavior. And I've been one of those representatives in a legal, so I know what that's like. But the fact that he behaved that way, he's not apologetic. I get that he's moved to Little Rock. He's not our problem, but there are kids in Little Rock too. And I am not comfortable voting for him to ever be back in a classroom. So my motion, which could just be me, is to remove this, to consider revocation and the appropriate notice to him on revocation by the staff. I mean, again, it may just be me, but I'm just not comfortable given these graphic facts.
My understanding is his move to Little Rock is he's now in higher ed instead of secondary.
Now, what?
Higher ed.
That's not helping me. I renewed. I just might have got some votes out of that. I stick with my motion. It shouldn't be an edit.
Okay, is there a second to the motion? Got a second. Okay, discussion. Questions?
What are we voting now?
What?
What will the vote be?
Okay, the vote would be that that we're going to remove it with the instructions to go back with consideration
Of revocation
of revocation back to the, right,
with notice.
yeah, with the normal process, going back to him, considering revocation, giving him a chance to respond. Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove? Aye. Dr. Trout?
Aye.
Ms. Pepper?
Aye.
Mr. Officer?
Aye. Motion is carried. Thank you. Phil, appreciate it. I will echo Wendy's comments that I think you're doing a great job on this, and you know, we're, I think, taking a closer look at these as we need to, and focus to do that.
And I do want to say one thing in this meeting, because I don't want anyone to think that I would go contrary to my conscience in voting the way that I did today. I voted the way I believe I needed to vote today. What I said in workshop, I think that there are circumstances in which we would take into consideration with letters of recommendation, someone turning their life around, and being in a situation where we would approve someone or approve the recommendation of staff. So I just want to make sure I go on record as saying that in this meeting, because I am going to always vote my conscience, and I would much rather, I believe more like you do, Wendy, than perhaps I have led you to believe in my other conversation. So I wanted to go on record saying, absolutely, we want the best in front of our students, and we certainly do not want to, we want to err on the side of caution. There's no question about that. But I also believe that there are times and circumstances in which someone can and will turn their life around, and I think we should give serious consideration to that if we have all that supporting information. Similarly, too, if we have all the right information to make the decisions we made today, then we make them according to our conscience.
Great, good comment.
I mentioned this to Philip also. I think it would be great. I know we have a lot of workshop stuff, but in a future work session, a summary of just sort of the standard of review that Philip has to live under and like the process, so that we can all appreciate more, or just be able to figure out like what his analysis, the hoops he has to go through as the lawyer, so that I think we can be more cognizant of that. It may not change how our vote is, but I think it would be helpful for him to be able to do that.
Good comment. There.
I think that's a great suggestion. I wanted to add into, first, appreciation for Philip's work. He's jumped into a huge backlog. So the sheer volume of these cases is a little bit daunting, and it's disturbing, and there's a lot of gray and the legal arguments. And I just want to say to the board that I appreciate your commitment to voting on what's best for students. And each time you do that, and each time in some cases where it's different from a recommendation, it helps us as a staff to know how to better bring you recommendations that will be in line, and I think that is a good suggestion in terms of maybe having an overview of the process, because it is complicated, and I can tell you we take this very seriously too, but I appreciate the engagement of this board in helping us to find the right place to be in some of these very difficult decisions, and a lot of them are very, much gray area that we're navigating, so thank you for your commitment, and we'll make sure we do that at a future meeting.
The important thing is the staff's doing their job. They're making a call based on criteria that is more narrow than ours. But they're giving us all the information we need to make the call at our level. So I think that's
great.
I think
Okay.
that's also true. Your decision is different.
Yep. Okay, that concludes our meeting. We've got our next meeting, October the 23rd in Memphis. Bill, you want to give a commercial here on getting everybody to Memphis and your university?
Well, just to say, we are going to, Cato and I are going to roll out our West Tennessee red carpet and get ready for life on our collegiate Gothic liberal arts campus. And we are so looking forward to hosting the October meeting.
Great. Well, we're certainly looking forward to it, and really appreciate your work and Cato's work to provide the invitation and make the arrangements for us. So we really appreciate that. We do have meetings on the calendar for 2016. There are January the 29th, no change in this. This is the ones that we have previously reported. January the 29th, April the 15th, July the 21st, and October the 20th. Okay, any other items for us today?
Mr. Chairman, did
Yes.
I sleep or did we vote on A, B, C, D, E, H, and J?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got them. Okay. Any other items? Okay, well, a good meeting, really good workshop today and good meeting. I appreciate all the work the staff doing. I think we're addressing some important issues and doing it in a very outstanding manner. Thanks everybody for being here. Bill, appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to seeing you in October. Take care. We'll see you. Yeah, without texting, we were dirt.
I'm hoping. That's why I try to get a little more, like, so back. I'll be moving. I can actually.
We got some nice music to go to sleep.
Elevator.
Yeah, we did that.
We have information that you can do with what
I mean, actually,
allegation.
chat with one of my friends over there and see, like,
Oh, yeah, he did.